Welcome to another edition of PPL Live Week 10. We are coming into the home stretch of the season. Interconference warfare is ended, and now most teams are back in their conferences battling it out to decide who will make the Final Four. We're going to start off with our first matchup. Squad Underestimated versus the Mean Machine. Squad Underestimated comes into this matchup finally getting a win over Patty's Twins. They were able to get good play out of Christian McCaffrey, who looked awesome finally after weeks and weeks of wondering, when this guy would show up. Carlos Hyde also was a contributor with 17 points. And the squad finally looked like the team that they probably expected to be early in the season. Moving forward, Dez Bryant, he's going to have to continue to play better. It's really become a challenge because Dallas doesn't necessarily need Dez Bryant to play well for the Cowboys to win. So Dez's production is continuing to suffer based on that logic. I think Adam Thielen is a guy that squad may want to get another look at. But Robbie Anderson made a few plays for them, so they may want to go with Robbie and see if he's able to pay the dividends that he was able to pay last Thursday night against the Twins. Big win for squad, but once again, they're only playing spoiler in this matchup because they're paying the hottest team in the PPL in the Mean Machine. The Mean Machine has won 5 straight games. And when you look at it, he's been pretty resourceful. Got to give credit where it's due. Alvin Kamara has been one of the better free agent pickups of the entire season. He's really been able to fill the shoes that Joe Mixon was expected to fill. So hats off to the machine for the Alvin Kamara pickup. He had a pretty good game against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I expect him to continue to have success in that offense. I'm looking also ahead at the fact that there will be no Kareem Hunt. That could hurt the machine, but they have more than enough adequate players to make up for a slow down week of production from him. Looks like Marlon Mack is going to get the play there. Sammy Watkins was an acquisition that the machine made. Kind of chasing points there. Watkins is not a real integral part of that offense. He's just more of a big play specialist for them. So it's going to be interesting to see if they are able to integrate him more into the offense and if that can benefit the Mean Machine. Michael Thomas has looked awesome. He's not scoring touchdowns, but he's been a consistent wide receiver, and he's the best the machine got. So it's going to be incumbent on Michael Thomas to make plays to keep the machine's winning streak going. Hunter Henry and Joe Mixon, 2 up and down players that both have the talent to be significant pieces in their offenses, but also can be afterthoughts because there are other options available in both of those teams' respective attacks. And it's really, going to come down to if the game flow favors them. Looking at this matchup, though, it's actually going to be a very, very close one to call. With no Kareem Hunt, the Mean Machine does have a little bit of a disadvantage there. They're going to have to hope that some, unexpected players are able to make big plays. That being said, I'm gonna go with the upset in this first matchup. Squad's going with Josh McCown, who has been a pretty good fantasy quarterback, and Tampa Bay has given up the most passing yards in the league. So McCown's a good play. McCaffrey and Hyde are great plays. And Thielen may need to get in the lineup. But either way, I like Squad Underestimated's plays this week. I say they continue to play spoiler. I got Squad Underestimated winning 112-98. Moving on to our next matchup in the PPL, we've got Big C's Comeback Kids going up against Patty's Twins. The Comeback Kids left no doubt last week in a very, very, very impressive performance. After losing Deshaun Watson for the season, some would have thought, it's time for the kids, looks like, to come back down to earth. But that was not the case, as Matthew Stafford reigned for the kids on Monday Night Football with a pretty big effort that helped lead them to victory. But the kids, they continue to do it the right way. Adrian Peterson had a pretty big game for them against the 49ers. But Devonta Freeman is falling back down to earth. And he's had a bum shoulder, so that they've got to be aware of that. That is probably playing a big part in his production. I'm looking over at Mohamed Sanu, which was an underrated acquisition, but he's a very good receiver. Just because if the ball's not going to Julio, it likely is going to Mohamed Sanu, and he's a guy that has shown that he can make plays when called upon. Evan Ingram, I've sung his praises throughout the season. He continues to be a solid play, and he's a top 5 tight end in the PPL. And that's a position that is of a very high value, because there isn't much talent at that position. If you can get one of the 4 or 5 top tight ends, that puts you at a decided advantage on a weekly basis. I like the Vikings defense. I don't like Washington's offense. Even though they won against Seattle last week, Washington's offense, it's one that can be had by a defense, and I think the Vikings have a good shot at that. Jaguars coach against the Chargers. The Chargers have struggled, at certain points through the season, particularly on the road. So the Jaguars is also going to be a good play. On the Twins side, I mean, at this point, they're just playing out the string. They're looking like the runaway team for the first pick in the draft. Tevin Coleman and Dion Lewis, it looks like, are going to be the main 2 guys out of the backfield for the Twins. AB comes back for the Twins, which should be helpful, being that he is, pretty much the only player on this team that you can, set and forget. Everyone else is pretty much interchangeable. Andy Dalton has been, a pedestrian quarterback for the Twins. And Tyler Kroft, although he's been a pretty solid tight end based on the fact that he's, pretty much been a backup but is able to put up big numbers, has helped the Twins out in many respects. The Vikings coach against the Redskins, we talked about that defense. The Twins are getting the other end of that. That being said, this matchup is pretty straightforward for me. The Twins, despite the fact that they've been championship level in past years, they just have not been able to find any magic week to week. And I don't think that changes this week. I think the comeback kids have the better lineup. I like Jarvis Landry on Monday night to close things out. And we got Big C's comeback kids winning this matchup 120-108. Moving on to our next matchup in the PPL, we have the Baby Gas team taking on Only for the Boss. The BGT came so close to defeating the Argonauts and snapping their ridiculous win streak in the Alpha Conference of, I believe, 12 games. But it was not to be. Some of those things have a lot to do with setting lineups at the last minute. If the BGT plays a kicker, they knock the Argo off and get a big win. Not that it really is going to matter, because this team is not playoff bound. And even a victory over the Argonauts last week wouldn't have helped their situation very much anyway. Melvin Gordon returns for the BGT, who sorely missed him last week because of the lack of production from the guys who were in the lineup. Doug Baldwin played big, as did Marvin Jones Jr., so that receiving core for the BGT is a big threat. And then Larry Fitzgerald, he still had a solid game, even though he didn't find the end zone. So the BGT has skill position players to make plays. And let's not forget that 35 points on the bench from T.Y. Hilton, who, it's hard to trust him without Andrew Luck in the lineup, but his speed and his ability to, make a big play in the open field is going to be something that definitely, is advantageous for him. But I can understand why BGT decided not to go with that route, but they've got good talent on their team. Matt Ryan actually woke up last week, so there's reason for optimism going forward. But they've let too many games slip at this point in the season, and it's cost them. On the Bosses side, it was really a no-show week after a huge victory over the Gaff. They needed that win over the Mean Machine, and the Mean Machine basically came out and dismantled them. And they kind of dismantled themselves. C.J. Anderson and Jonathan Stewart, the backfield, has just really been, not very good. I think Jonathan Stewart ended up with negative points. You just simply cannot win that way. With that being said, Russell Wilson has been a stud, as has Travis Kelce and Tyreek Hill. But those guys won't be in the lineup this week. Hill and Kelce, as the Chiefs are on the bye. So there's no big chiefing this week. That puts a serious damper on the boss because of his dependence on big chiefing. But he gets guys like Stephon Diggs back, and I'm sure he's hoping that those guys can make up for some of the production being missed. That being said, no Chiefs, no Boss win. I think that the Baby Gas team has a big advantage now that everyone that they need is in the lineup. They just have to make sure that all the supplemental positions such as defense, coach, and kicker are set. Those positions do matter, despite some think that they don't. That being said, the Baby Gas team is the better team, and they have way more options this week. I got the Baby Gas team winning 118-97.